Hi, and welcome to the first AVCCI Business Book Club. I'm Steve Turner and co-chair along with Jim Silvestri, and we're going to bring together like-minded entrepreneurs and business people who love to read and learn about new books, learn techniques, and get educated on those. Then we'll have a guest author every month is the goal for this. And so if you've written a book and you're a member of this chamber, feel free to let us know, let Kevin know, and we can hopefully get you scheduled in for the third Wednesday of every month. This is the first one. And so if you're looking at July 15th and corresponding dates after that, we'll get all those scheduled. So we're going to be doing that. We want to educate, read, and just have fun every month. There's so many book clubs out there. Most of it's centered around drinking and noshing, say. So if you want to drink and nosh while you're in this book club, that's great. But we want to have some serious conversation too as to how we could all get better at what we do and improve and learn from some of the masters. So appreciate that. And I think, Kevin, you have some announcements for us.
Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm very excited for this, and Jim and Steve, thank you so much for your leadership for the AVCCI Business Book Club. I'm very excited, and more to come. Just briefly, some announcements from America's Virtual Chamber of Commerce and Industry, AVCCI. Tomorrow, same time, we have proactive business education committee meeting scheduled. So the registration is available on AVCCI page, avcci.us. Also, next week we have Long Island, New York chapter monthly meeting, and business strategy and innovation committee meetings are scheduled as well. All these committee meetings are free of charge, complimentary. So we invite any business professionals who would like to be part of these, more than welcome to join and be part of AVCCI community through committee meetings. Also, we also encourage any of the professionals who hasn't registered, sign up as a member. We also encourage them to be a member as well. Regardless, we will welcome everyone for the committee and business book club meetings moving forward. So that's my announcement. Thank you very much. Back to you, Steve, Jim.
Yes, sir. So, the goal is to hear from the authors first, who are our guest author of the month. And then we're going to talk about a bestseller later on. Jim will handle that today. And today's featured book is Grit by Angela Duckworth, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was one of the better business books I've read in a while. And there's a lot of good stuff there, and we'll let Jim talk about that. But first, we want to start with Bill Miller. And Bill has written a couple of books about the CEO and new CEOs and what it takes to be successful. So, Bill, we'll start with you and let you talk about what it's like to be a rookie CEO and who you are and why you wrote this book.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I did do a full podcast with Kevin, so you could find that on his, I guess, the YouTube channel. But thanks for having me as your first author. Uh, I didn't start out to be an author, to be truthful. I had 5.5 decades in technology, starting as a software developer. We used to call ourselves system programmers. They don't use that term anymore. But go back way back when to the 70s, and then the 35 plus years at the executive level. So I had a seat at the table for many years, both at startups and multi-billion-dollar corporations. So I worked for some big names and from not that well-known names, but in the startup world, I have the experience that I write about the CEOs, both Silicon Valley Tier 1 venture-funded startup, over where I spent a couple of years, and a privately funded startup in Connecticut. So I used to call it East Podunk. And the challenges are very different from a tier one VC funded company versus a privately funded company. The board meetings are night and day. The deliverables, you still have to deliver a product. and deliver revenue. So, but I was really early in both of those companies. So I bring that experience, and I decided, you know, I started to work for a first-time CEO, and I just took copious notes to keep very organizationally structured notes, if you will, chronological in spiral notebooks uh, for maybe last 25 years of my career, and would make notes about why meetings, why do we have this meeting, and I made some observations with that very first time CEO, which just happened to be a woman, and I've mentioned her in both books, but she is no longer in the business, so she's retired and become a social worker. So I don't use her name. She has a code name, but the things that you learn are you start to see patterns of CEOs, and as I started to see those patterns, I collected all that information, and I said I can help first-time CEOs shorten the cycle to become much more effective by sharing the mistakes that people make, sharing how decisions are made, and providing examples of the good, the bad, and the ugly, really. So the first book, The Rookie CEO, which I published in 2020, and was able to earn 2 awards with that book, is a very short book. It's a kind of a 2-hour read or so, less than 3 hours in audiobook format. And I worked for 9, it just happened that I worked for 9 first-time CEOs in a row. So I had a really nice repertoire to build and draw from. And I share those stories. And because I don't share any real names in the book, you might be able to determine who the CEOs are by seeing what company I worked for, LinkedIn. I saved a lot of stories from the first book, and the second book has more intent. I published the second book last year, around the 1st of November, What Every CEO Must Know, 37 Secrets to Lead with Confidence and Power. And those are 2 of the 4 dimensions that I believe CEOs really need to be successful. This is about confidence and power. And I have at the end of each chapter, there's 37 chapters in the book. There are takeaways. Those takeaways I have designed as secrets. And really, they are, again, intended to shorten your cycle of learning and accelerate success. That's really the goal. And at my age and my stage of the career, I'm sort of semi-retired, but I'm a darn busy guy, as Kevin knows, because I have my own startup and I do advisory services. But this particular book, there are several CEOs that are identified. They gave me their story, the biggest mistake they made, how they could have avoided it, how they recovered from it, if they did, because they don't all recover, and how they move forward. And there's about 20 some odd CEOs in there. Again, their names, you can go to their LinkedIn. I tag them a lot on my LinkedIn posts on my blogs when I write about some of the chapters and the stories that I share. But those patterns just happen to work across companies. It doesn't matter whether it's the Silicon Valley startup, the Connecticut startup, or any large corporation. And like I said, I work for both Fujitsu and Rockwell, which are both multi-billion-dollar corporations that you can find offices around the world. So it's very interesting. And one of those, the Fujitsu, is I was an international VP general manager for a division. So I had a seat at the table in Japan, which was quite interesting. But you're international, so you get to appreciate what it's like when corporate is in another country, home office in another country, and you're in the U.S. So I have the scopes like that. And I do have people outside the U.S. that contact me that want to, and they find me through my book, typically, or my posts on LinkedIn that refer to the books. And that's really where my lead magnets come from. People contact me and ask me for 7 tips, which I have from the 2 books. But I also provide frameworks. The second book has many, many frameworks in there, and they're frameworks that I used over the years. It was either mine or somebody else's that I modified for myself. So those are really, really excellent pieces, in my opinion, to get people started, and then you can modify them for yourself. So that's kind of how I got there.
What are the biggest mistakes or common mistakes you see across the board with these new CEOs?
Well, so my focus is on blind spots, because blind spots really are everywhere. We all have them. I don't care how good you are, how smart you are, you can't see around the corner. The first one I would say is you don't really listen to the people around you. You might hear what they say, but you don't process it. That's the number one way, really, in my opinion, to determine how to find out where your blind spots are. Other people see you. People on your senior, if you are the first time CEO or any CEO, the people around you can see everything. They pay attention to everything you say, everything you write, the tone that you use, everything. And if you start to complain about people, if you're in the office, this is one that I saw, participated in, and the CEO says, I want to fire that marketing director because, she comes in late and leaves early. She drops her kids off to daycare and picks them up. It doesn't matter that she works at home for 4 hours a night. It doesn't really matter, but he wants to fire her. And I said, no, I'm not going to fire her. It's just not going to work that way. And I was CEO there. So the interesting thing was that he comes in late from the gym. A lot of companies allow people to do that. They don't have an issue as long as they deliver to what they're assigned and responsible for. So that's the first blind spot, is not really paying attention, not listening, not processing, and not using feedback loops like you should. That's the number one. There are many, many more. Hiring for the wrong reason. In the book, in the second book, I have great stories from real CEOs about hiring too soon, hiring too late, or hiring the wrong people. That's one of the biggest blind spots for a first-time CEO or a founder CEO. So, for example, the opportunist used to hire, which is one particular CEO that's in both books, a lot of stories about him. Great guy. I learned a lot. He used Vistage. He was a member of Vistage. So he had, some of you may know what Vistage is. Vistage is a CEO peer group. You pay a lot of money to be a member in Vistage. But the thing is, they provide great guidance. And he used to hire, before he got involved with Vistage and myself, he used to hire based on feel. I like this guy. I can tell him what to do and he's going to do it. It doesn't matter what the rest of the team says. So he would just hire the person, and guess what would happen? It would fail. Within 3 to 6 months, every single time. And when I got to the company, they used to tell me some of the examples from before, from the early days of this company. So he was a later stage first-time CEO, like 15 years in, and he's still making the same mistakes. So it doesn't matter where you are in the scheme of things on the scale. Those are two of them.
Are you talking about he's hiring people just that'll say yes, and they don't have the expertise to actually execute the project, or they're just yes men for?
Well, so I'll give you an example of one that the team voted down. I was there. We were interviewing for a director of customer service. There was no VP there. There was just a director. And because it was a SaaS, there's a lot of a lot of customer churn. So there was new seats every week and every month that they would sell, but then they would have more churn, more people leave because they didn't like customer service. Customer service just, God, you have another problem? You know what I'm saying? And so they were unhappy with the service. So we were interviewing for a new director, somebody who could bring some new techniques and much better customer facing issues to the table and to the customers. And the CEO, I always had structured interviews. So the CEO is interviewing for culture fit, but secretly he was interviewing for who can he boss around, because this person reported directly to him at the time. So everybody else said, this guy can't make it here. He doesn't have the skill sets. Yes, he could be a director. He has been a director of customer service, but he's looking for a job because he's not very good at it. And everybody had a score for each one of these people that they interviewed on a scale of 1 to 10. And then I would call the team together, and I write about this process in the book, in both books actually, a little bit. And the thing is that the process can work if everybody follows the focused interview concept, which comes out of Top Grading and The Who. It's a combination of the father wrote one book, the son wrote another book, but the combination of those is my favorite hiring and leadership of hiring A players and teams. So a huge blind spot is hiring people at the wrong time or for the wrong reason. And those are probably some of the biggest ones that I've experienced firsthand. And then there's one that came up at noontime. I have a call with a client today at noontime, and he had another example. He came from my first book in 2022, and he's been a client since. And he had an example. There's an example in that first book that I write more about in the second book, which is a CEO, first-time CEO, a former sales guy at a big name company that we all know about in security world. And what happened was he hated finance. So he let the CFO give CFO final signature authority for everything. And I had said, you cannot do that. But he did it anyway because he hated finance. I said, dude, you got to learn it. Learn enough about it. Take a finance course for CEOs who don't like finance. Learn all the fundamentals of a balance sheet, all the fundamentals of budgeting, all the fundamentals of tracking and signing off whatever people need. You got to have a process for that stuff. And this was a Silicon Valley startup. So he gave signature authority to the CFO, and over the next couple of years, the CFO embezzled $5 million out of 26 million VC funded dollars. I watched the money disappear, took it to the board, took it to the two co-founders. Didn't matter. They said, no, you're not telling us the truth, until one day they saw it. But I had left. I saw where the company was going. I resigned on my own while there was still money left and went and got myself something else. But in the meantime, I write about this. Don't give up signature authority. You can delegate up to certain amounts and for certain types of expenses, capital equipment even, but you can't give final authority to anybody. What I got another example today of someone who gave up signature authority as the CEO, thought she was closing a deal, and they wiped out her bank accounts. The company had $0 and had to shut down. So she went from thinking she was signing a multi-million-dollar deal to nothing. And he said, one of his potential investors asked him about that story because he brought it up. And he said, yeah, my mentor told me never to give up signature authority. And he read it back in 2020, 21, and 22 before he signed on with me. And it's really simple, And we've seen it multiple times. And there was a guy who reviewed that first book and said, who gives up signature authority as a CEO? I hate to tell you, but I had a seat at the table and I watched that happen. It happens. You can't do that, you know? So for the biggest deals, if you're in a big company, the CEO still has signature authority for an acquisition or a major investment or major capital equipment that's coming in. The CEO is still going to see it at the senior leadership team meetings or the review boards. It's that simple. And you just can't give that away. So those are some blind spots that, just because you're not good at something, if you're the CEO, go learn it. And today there's no excuse with AI. You can create a coach, a first level coach before you need a real person, an advisor or something like that with AI and learn some fundamentals really easily. So,
Bill, are there people that are good CEOs in the early stages of getting the right people on the bus and the
there
right
are.
seats?
There,
Have you
there
run
are.
across those that are really good at, they know who to hire and how to do it and how to delegate and so forth?
There are, but they're few and far between. They all have a blind spot somewhere or another. Some of the more successful CEOs, for example, in the Valley, the reason you see them go from one company to the next company, they bring their team, the board of directors, when they decide to go after a very specific CEO who has a great track record, these CEOs could retire because they've already exited somewhere and made tons of money, but they love the job, they love the leadership, and they just get greedy. But they're good. They know who you got to find out and learn how to trust people. I have a couple of exercises in the book on teaching CEOs how to find who to trust if you take over the job. You start the rumor yourself. So you create a story and then you write down, make sure you log what you're going to do, but you write down your story and you tell each of the people on your leadership team one piece of the story and then see what comes back to you first. And that helps you do two things. One, who's the biggest leak in the company? So when you want to start a rumor, you have somebody to use. You call them in, private one-on-one, give them the piece you want to test the idea. Believe me, it's going to be everywhere within 2 hours. But then you find out when it doesn't come back to you who you can start to trust. And then you take them one step at a time through a trust exercise. And those are some of the ways. And those are some huge blind spots, is immediately trusting everybody. You have to earn that trust yourself. So your people should have to earn the trust from you. But the CEOs who are successful in that area, how to hire the A players, they have a process, they have the connections, they make sure that happens. They don't always fire everybody. They might move them sideways, depends on the side of the company. At Fujitsu, I got moved sideways. So instead of being a VP GM, that CEO who's in both books, she flattened the organization. She took down the two business units that we had, one of which I ran, and put me in charge of something else. So it's okay to do that, but the worst thing that she did was she brought in people over all of the VPs from her previous company that were not qualified, really. They just weren't. And she did it anyway. But those are some of the things. But she made so many mistakes. She was with the company just a bit over a year, and then she got fired. You can't do that kind of stuff. You got to be much smarter. But yes, there are successful CEOs. But they typically have a process. They already have trusted team, and they already have ways to determine who to trust when they take over a team.
Yeah, Bill, great. I appreciate all this. This is awesome information. I think everybody would agree. Do you want to hold up? Do you have a copy of your book in front of you so we can see it?
So I have two of them.
Okay.
This is the Rookie CEO. That's the first one, and you can see it's 110 pages, but I think it's 88 pages of text, and that's the short read. That was my first one, and this is the second one. And as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger. It's 332 pages. It's the paperback version, and that's that book. And I just last week received the second award for this book, and
Awesome.
it was an International Impact Award book, which I thought was interesting because I've won a global award and an international impact award with that book. It's great when they come out of nowhere because a lot of us self-published authors, you can apply for awards and then you get picked by a committee. I love it when it just comes to you and you get an email that says congratulations on. So that's very helpful. And you can get the paperback in the print book, the hardcover and the paperback of the new book, What Every CEO Must Know, on virtually every retailer. Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. You can go into the bookstore and order it. It's in their catalog. Amazon is the only one that has the Kindle, the ebooks, and the audiobook is on the audiobook you can buy almost everywhere too. A lot of retailer searches for the rookie CEO will get the print, the paperback, and the audiobook because those are global. But I don't have an audiobook yet for What Every CEO Must Know, but I will be recording my own. I hired someone to narrate the first book, who's a radio guy out of Detroit, really pretty good. But I don't want to spend the money. I want to do it myself so I can kind of ad lib through the actual audiobook creation. I have so many ways to emphasize the story that is really me. So I'm going to do that with the second book. I just haven't gotten to that yet. I'm busy, too busy.
Bill, Timothy, is it writer or reader?
Writer.
Writer. Okay, great. He has a question for you.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Hi, Bill. I'm Tim Ryder. I'm a CPA. I had a question for you, something that I had heard. I wanted to get your take on it. Talking about the hiring process. I mean, someone once told me that even if you come across someone or a candidate, or you hear about somebody that is a really, really, will be a great asset to the company, but maybe you don't need that. Maybe you don't need someone at that level or that type of, I guess, position. But if they're just too good to pass up on, that you hire that person, you get them before anybody else does. What do you think about that?
Okay, so I've seen this one in motion as well. I don't actually write about that one, but I do have stories there. There are some companies, larger companies, that will create a position for that person. Even a mid-sized company will create a position for that person if that person really fits what you just described, and they don't have. So let's say in a financial role, they might be looking for a controller, but a CFO comes along, and they want that person instead of the controller, and then later on they'll hire that person, and then a controller can be hired by that person later, based on budget requirements. But if I'm on the team, I'm going to recommend not to hire that person, even if that person's available. And I'll tell you why. It changes the dynamics, A, of the leadership team, and B, the CEO gets a reputation that they're easy. I hate to say that. I've seen it work, but the people on the team don't like it. So I've seen it happen before. Now there's at a lower level position, I've seen it work. So let's say you're looking for a product manager, and a person who's already a director of product management comes in and fits the description you just talked about, and the person says, I'm a hands-on product manager, I'm willing to do it all for a year, and then that works. I've seen that one work. Because, and I'll tell you what, in today's world with AI, people don't hire strategists. They just don't hire strategists because the strategy typically can be handled by the CEO, the COO, where I was responsible for every move. But I've seen it work both ways. It's really a tough one because if you're the candidate, you don't understand it.
Yeah.
You shake your head. It's like, I don't get it. But you got to think about the company. Put yourself in the CEO's shoes. Put yourself in the leadership team's
They might not have the
shoes.
budget, right? Or they might not have the, it could be too much. I guess at the higher level, it could be too top heavy. Maybe at a lower level, it makes a little more sense, you're saying, but it could be
Which
a
is
little
where
too
I've
high.
seen it work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's mid-level. Director level is mid-range in a medium size or a larger company. In the larger company, it's almost a no-brainer. They're going to hire the person if that person becomes available. You see it happen today with the big AI players. If they can recruit somebody, if Anthropic can recruit somebody from Meta who's done all of their AI, or from Google, they're going to hire that person and pay him $2 or $3 million because that's what these people are making now. All these big, really incredibly talented technical people in the AI world who've been around for years but never had the salary. Now they're getting it because they can. But these people do the work. So, we around here, my business partner in Zaboom, the voice AI startup, we're helping people reinvent themselves. That's what her coaching side of the business is. We have Zaboom, but we each have a coaching type. I have the advisory services. She does coaching, teaching people how to reinvent themselves. And really, it's hard to do that because if you think about it, the hardest thing to do is to position yourself in the world. And especially if you're looking for a job and you get let go for the first time in your career, or if you're one of these people that get laid off every time you get a new job, 6 months later, you're gone. If you're just a strategist and you can't do the work, you have to hire a team. They're not going to hire you, or they're going to let you go soon because they need people who can do the work. And that's what today's world has come to. So my next book, which I know I've talked to Kevin a little bit about, I'm bringing in two more dimensions. I have the confidence and power. And power to me is execution. So confidence and power is what every CEO must know is. And I use the mistakes for that book. The next one is going to bring in clarity and resilience. So it's confidence, clarity, resilience, and power. To me, those are the four dimensions of really every leader, but the CEO especially. And I'm focused on the CEO. I might have a subsection on leadership, non-CEO leadership. I'm not sure yet, but if you're not resilient, if you just quit, if you're a quitter, then you're just not going to be successul.
Yeah, that's almost a great lead-in in the grit.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a great segue.
Yeah. Anybody else have a quick question for Bill in this segment?
Tim, did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Bill. Great stuff. I forgot to introduce everybody. My bad. Should we go around quickly and just say who you are and who you're with? We know Bill. Tim, why don't you tell us who you're with and so forth?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. I'll be quick. My name is Tim Reiter. I'm a tax director at a CPA firm called MGO LLP. We serve mostly the middle market. We do tax, we do some business consulting, and we do accounting as well.
Great. Mel, I see you're on the call.
I am. So it's good to be here. So Mel Blackwell, spent 35 years as a corporate fixer. Really enjoy listening to Bill. He's been spot on everything. I was tended to be on the operations side, so COO, and I worked for a lot of CEOs. They're fascinating, but kind of hung up those leads. More of a thought leader now. Wrote a book, keynote speaking, and being very selective on certain engagements with leadership teams. Just helping leadership teams solve riddles. I enjoy that. I just don't want to get chained to the steering wheel again. But
Okay,
that's
we
what
have
I'm
Joe.
doing now.
Are you here? Pictures up. Stan. Oh, where's Joe?
Yeah, sorry, I'm driving right now in between appointments. My name is Joe Beauchamp. Welcome, everybody. Some of you already know. And I do leadership development. My company's Beauchamp Team Growth Solutions. We work with leaders who generally don't see that they're the issue, and generally they are, right? So all problems really are leadership problems, and we help break through that leadership bottleneck. So it's training, it's coaching, mindset, leadership strategies, communication, emotional intelligence. I also have a podcast on the American Business Podcast channel called the International Leadership Podcast, which we're about to record. That's coming up at 4 o'clock today. So if Kevin and I have to dip out at 4 o'clock, that's why. And I just I do a radio show on LI News Radio called Exponential Impact. So it's a lot similar types of content, mindset, beliefs, ways to improve leadership and influence, performance, that kind of stuff. So that's what I do. I'm in the process of writing a book called Leadership Unleashed, and hopefully that'll be done this year, and I can launch that. I also host a leadership conference that Jim's been to a couple of times now called Live to Lead. It's coming up in January, so you'll definitely be seeing and hearing more from me. I also am co-chair of the Leadership and Management Growth Committee here on AVCCI. So hopefully you guys join that meeting to see what we're about coming up in a few more weeks with Christine Daniels, who's a friend of mine and fellow John Maxwell leadership trained coach. And so,
Okay, great. Stan Lee, are you with us? David Smith, are you with us? I see your audio's off. Then we have Mary Taylor. Okay, well, I guess they're listening in or they'll catch it on the podcast. But Jim, Grit, great book. You recommended it. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Just a quick intro. I'm Jim Silvestri. I'm co-chair along with Steve of the Business Book Club, and looking forward to sharing some of my thoughts. And my goal is, since this is a smaller group, is to kind of make it intimate. Feel free to interrupt, ask questions. The goal of this is to kind of share feedback, and not just learn from what I learned, but learn from everybody else on the call as well. So here goes. So each year, more than 14,000 applicants begin the admission process to West Point. Right, that pool gets reduced down to about 4,000 people who get nominated, and then 2,500 of those meet the academic and physical requirements, and then 1,200 are enrolled. Right, so you're talking about a pool of 14,000 down to 1,200. So you're talking about a pretty restrictive recruiting process, and yet still 20% of those people that enroll drop out within the first 2 months. So why? Right, and that study was really at the root of this book, and what caused Angela Duckworth to write the book. And she sums the answer up to that question in one word: it's grit. Right, the difference between people who make it through West Point and those who don't are those that have grit and those who don't. So what is grit, and why does it matter? Webster defines grit as a firmness of mind or spirit, an unyielding courage in the face of hardship or danger, right? Angela Duckworth has a slightly different take on it. She defines grit as than what you could have done but didn't. With effort, talent becomes skill, and at the very same time, effort makes skill productive, right? So that's why she's saying effort counts twice. So this is my second time reading the book. I read it again in preparation for this discussion, and it's interesting because when you read the same book at two different points in your life, you get completely different things out of it. So I'm going to share a couple of things that spoke to me a little bit this time versus last time. So my youngest daughter is in a 4+1 program at SUNY New Paltz, and she's studying psychological research, which is the basis for this book. And I didn't have that connection before. So I've had some pretty interesting conversations with my daughter about what her thinking is. She just graduated from the 4 years. She's got the +1 left. She's working on her master's starting in September. So I'm really looking forward to continuing these conversations and seeing where her path takes her. Second, I'm currently a private equity CFO. I've been an accountant for 30+ years now, starting as a staff accountant in 1994, progressing all the way up to private equity CFO. But reading the book has kind of made me rethink a few things and about how I view my accomplishments and my failures. And it also, I'm contemplating making a pretty significant pivot at this stage in my life, and there's more to come on that in the next few weeks. And I'll get into that a little bit more because Angela Duckworth talks about the 4 key components of growth, of growing grit, right? You're not just born with grit, you can grow it. And the 4 ways that grit grows is through interest, through practice, through purpose, and through hope. Right? And interest equals passion, right? When I grew up, the goal was to pick a major that would allow me to find gainful employment and make a decent enough wage to be a good provider for my family. Commencement speeches didn't talk about chasing your dreams or following your passion. And that's how you end up doing something for 30+ years, but not ever feeling fulfilled. So I think the other thing that's been missing for me is purpose, right? No matter how hard I try to cling to a company's mission, vision, or values, there's just something that's always been missing for me. And another one of my favorite quotes from the book is in chapter 8, titled Purpose. At its core, the idea of purpose is the idea that what we do matters to people other than ourselves. And, I think that one of the last components is hope, right? And one of the things that has me really at the crossroads that I'm at is that I'm losing hope that I can right the ship where I am. So that, but like I said, more to come on that as we continue. In part 3 of Growing Grit, it's part 3 of the book is called Growing Grit from the Outside. And the book focuses on parenting for grit, the playing field for grit, and developing a culture of grit. Interestingly, as I plan my next steps, there's a chance that my older daughter, I have 2 daughters, 27 and 22, that my older daughter may end up coming to work with me. And this book got me thinking, becoming an entrepreneur is going to require grit, and those that I take on the journey with me will need it as well. So the book references a grit grid and a means for scoring grit. And it enabled me to have a conversation with my daughter, almost like it was weird because it was kind of like interview-like, but not really because she's my daughter. And one of the things that these chapters talk about is So those are some of the key takeaways for me from the book. I've also got, I'd like to open this up. I think a couple of good questions for discussion when you talk about the talent versus effort. I'd like to throw this question out to the group. Give me an example of where you've seen a less talented person outperform somebody who is naturally gifted, and or what led to that.
I want to talk about the NBA Finals that just happened. I think I was watching a video not too long ago. You got Wembanyama, who is an incredible talent, and he's a great player. And not saying he doesn't have grit, but I think you got him. He's 7'4", and you got Jalen Brunson, who's 6'2". Much shorter guy, but he's moving around him and getting shots past him and so on and so forth. And I think if you're going to be a basketball player, height is definitely important. But I just think that it also, there's a little bit of work ethic that goes involved into it. It gets involved with it too, and it's also experience and being through some downs and finally getting your ups at the end of the day. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the statistics. I'm sorry, who was that? Who was speaking?
No, it's me, Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
I read this book several years ago, and Jim and I actually met from your love for books and my love for books, and that's how we ended up just communicating and becoming friends over our love for reading and listening to audiobooks and stuff. So, but I read the book Grit a few times a few years ago. I gotta refresh on it again. But it showed me, like, I remember when I was coaching in soccer, and I considered that there was three categories that would make a good soccer player. One was their athletic ability, how fast they could run, how much endurance they had, their physical fitness level. The other was their skill set. How could they navigate the ball properly? They know how to, kick it right, whatever. And the other one I refer to as heart, which I would say that's grit, that ability to get knocked down, stand back up again, face insurmountable odds and keep going through the other team. Some kids just had this extra heart, this extra grit that made them super resilient and a force to be reckoned with. And I think in the face of, those other two skills, let's say their physical ability versus heart, a kid with more heart is going to go up against somebody who's got a better physical ability or a better talent, and they're going to win because you just don't stop them. They're just going to keep coming back. They're not going to give up. They're going to have that hope. They're going to have that resilience. You can't change their mindset or their attitude. They're just unstoppable. And I think that's that grit that I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not going to fail. I'm just going to keep getting up and go back out there again. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out a way.
Yeah, Joe, one of the quotes that you just reminded me of that I didn't call out that she talks about in the book is it's English translation of a Japanese saying. It's fall 7, rise 8, right? If you fall 7 times, rise 8 times.
Yeah.
And I think back to Tim's point about the Knicks, one of the statistics that stood out to me the most about that series, when you talk about grit, the San Antonio Spurs actually had the lead for 72% of that series, and the Knicks won the series in 5 games. So when you think about how much time the Knicks spent in that series behind, and yet still managed to win in what seemed like a pretty overwhelming fashion, winning 4-1.
The fourth game, I actually walked out on. I was at an event. It was on the TV, and I looked at it. I'm like, they're behind 20 something points. It's past halfway through the game. Probability is very low. They're coming back. They're not making it. And I walked out. The next morning, I turned on, the into social media and see.
Just said it, you added resilience to the grit thing. One of the reasons I'm adding resilience to my next round in my next book is because resilience is one of the things that makes a successful CEO. You you run into problems every single day, people on your team, the market, your investors, somebody's beating the daylights out of you, looking for a decision or whatever. But the resilience is how to get through that and continuously move. That fourth game that you were talking about, what came to my mind was the Patriots comeback against Atlanta in the Super Bowl. And I'm a big Patriots fan. I was born and bred in Boston area. One of the books behind me there is, maybe you can't see it, is Bill Belichick's new book. I saw his interview with Sean Hannity, and I had to go buy the book because I talk about Bill Belichick in one of my books about the Patriots way, the Patriots system, kind of like the old IBM way when they were bigger and stronger in certain areas. But the concept is there's a system. The thing with grit, and I haven't read it multiple times, but Angela is a psychologist, and the book to me is academic. So whenever I read an academic authored book, I respect it because they do way more research than I do typically. I like to talk to people, and maybe you can consider that research when I get different patterns and things like that. But her method of research is very different, as most psychologists are. So if your daughter likes to do research, she's probably going to be a decent psychologist because they go together. But to me, watching those guys come back, and I'm a Celtics fan, so watching the Knicks come back was interesting, right? I don't like New York any teams. I'm against all New York teams, except we had to root for them here, and we watched them because they had a sense of urgency. Every time they got behind, they dug in deeper. Yes, that's effort. It does meet the requirements of grit, but there's a sense of urgency that everyone on the court played for, and they just took advantage of every single mistake. There's the mistake thing again that San Antonio made. It's like the game winner in that fourth game. Wemby should have just blocked him out. How he got in behind Wemby to do that tip in is inexcusable to me. There was no sense of urgency and no grit from Wemby and San Antonio at that time. That's how I kind of look at it. So is that effort? It is. Wemby's probably beaten up from all the series that they had. He was outside taking 3-point shots. Where the hell was he? He should have been in there with grit like Jalen Brunson was all the time. So it's a great example, Joe, that you brought up talking about the Knicks series, you and Tim, because that is a great example of effort and grit. And I add the sense of urgency because you could see it. I saw it with the Patriots when they came back against, you could say Brady said, don't worry, we're going to come back. All of that is just noise to me. When you watch them on the field, they had a sense of urgency on every single play, and so do the Knicks. That is the difference. So you have to bring that into the business world as well. In my world, sense of urgency is critical. Somebody who's not as smart or not as good, not as educated, whatever, is going to outperform the person who's smarter and better and more degrees and all that if they have a sense of urgency to go along with their effort. Just my opinion.
One book I wanted. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim.
There's one other book I wanted to bring up, which I really think epitomizes grit. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor of the concentration camps and the horrible things that they did to people. And he talked about how he survived it. And, the SS would take him outside in 0-degree weather and naked them and all this just terrible stuff. And the ones that looked the most healthy or that were able to take it the best didn't get sent to the gas chambers, and the ones who didn't, unfortunately, did. And he talked about, mind over matter, obviously. And he talked about how, he had the way he survived it. One of the ways is that he was like, he had an experience being a doctor, and he would take care of the sick prisoners. and, you know, help them out. And that kind of kept him, you know, I guess what's the word? You know, kind of kept him busy, kind of try to keep his mind off it as much as possible. And I think someone mentioned it before, it might have been, you know, Jim, as part of the book, where like devotion to something other than yourself. And
Yeah.
that's what
Higher
really,
purpose.
Yeah, purpose.
exactly, purpose really helped him, you know, survive. And, you know, laughter, whenever he could laugh, you know, like just real quick, they would talk about how they would get fed like once a day, like soup that was very watered down. And then, you know, but then once in a while they get a treat. I don't even know if it's on purpose or not, where like they would ladle the bottom and there'd be some peas in there that would be like, and that to them was like special because they were getting, you know, starved every day. And they made a joke how like, you know, when we get out of this mess, we're gonna all go to restaurants and ask them to ladle it from the bottom for us because we're gonna be so addicted to that. And, you know, just the laughter helped them survive. So I just think it's, you know, the purpose. And, you know, some people just have the mindset for it. I don't know how he did it, but it's a short read too. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. I think you could probably read it in 4 hours.
That's a great book. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we're almost out of time. I just wanted to say thank you all. And what we want to try to do is pick a book for the next month, a feature book, and then have one of the members of the chamber who's written a book featured. And I know Mel has sent out some books, so we'll take a look at those for the next one. But a few ideas we had, I just throw these out. The Science of Scaling by Benjamin Hardy, Think Again, Adam Grant, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, and Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. Anybody have any preference on any of those? Or if not, we can just send out an email and you know, and vote on it, or just see if there's any feedback with what you guys want to talk about.
Well,
And most of those
selfishly,
books I have not read yet. So go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say selfishly, I'd recommend the Ben Hardy book because I haven't read it yet. But
You read the other ones, huh?
I read 2 of them. I read at least 2 of the other ones.
Okay. Cool. Well, we'll look into that and look into having a member of the chamber who's written a book featured on the next one. And does anybody have any questions about the book club? I thought it was a good first meeting.
Yeah, I think it's great. I appreciate it. Yeah, let us know the book if we know the book ahead of time. I think I just learned about grit. I mean, that we were discussing it today within the past week. So I know that this is our first meeting. But yeah, the sooner we can find out about it, give me a chance to read it, learn about it, be able to talk intelligently about it.
Okay, great. We will do that. All right. Anybody have any other questions or insights?
Just thank you.
Great job, Bill. Appreciate it. All
Thanks.
right. Thank you, guys. We'll hopefully see you next month and have some fun. Take care.
All right.
Everyone, thank
Sounds
you.
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.